Hi everybody, Tim Hughes here. I'm the CEO and co-founder of DLA Ignite. With me today I've got Kate O'Neill, and we're going to be talking about her book, What Matters Next, a leader's guide to making human-friendly tech decisions in a world that's moving too fast. Wow. Kate, where can people find you?
Oh, well, the easiest place and the best place to find me is my website, koinsights.com. And that has all the information about my books, my speaking, and all the links on my About Kate page to my socials. So I hope that people will find me there and reach out and say what what resonated with them about our discussion.
So Kate, I really love the book.
Great.
I thought it
Thank
was,
you.
I really did. I really loved it. And it's a real modern view on, if you want an update leadership book that's in the AI world, it's a great book to have.
Thank you.
What inspired you about it?
It's the what I heard from executives again and again. So as a keynote speaker, I do a lot of sessions where I do the Q&A, but it's mostly the people who come up to me one-on-one
Yeah.
afterward, and I have those conversations. And a lot of times what executive leaders will say is, thank you, this is great, and this is the vocabulary I needed because I'm facing so much pressure from my board, the other constituencies, the stakeholders, and they just felt like they were torn between needing to innovate, needing to push the organization forward, adopt things like AI and all these kind of emerging technologies, and feeling like they just didn't have enough information to do it well. And they were worried about moving too fast. They were worried about, what if I put the wrong technology in place and then 3 months later we have to rip it out and do a whole different thing. So I kept hearing this, and I felt like, it's the next logical step in the sequence from tech humanist to a future so bright to this, to address leaders directly and help solve some of what's keeping them awake at night.
So you just used the term tech humanist. So explain
Mm.
to us what you mean by that you're a tech humanist.
Yeah, I came up with that term almost a decade ago at this point, and it feels like it describes this position where certainly tech is important to our society, to our flourishing, but I think it's even more important to remember in all that mix the core of humanity. What really makes us human. And so what I have come through a lot of different stages of exploring, how we can use technology in innovative ways, how we can adopt at a societal level different technological advances. But it's all about how do we use technology in a way that helps business do better business and helps humanity thrive in the midst of that.
Because you talk in the book about bridging the tech human divide, don't you? You say that there's, I mean, you can go out onto the internet and you can read as many Forbes or whatever articles as you want on tech. But I don't know about you, but I come away from that and I feel that I'm missing something.
Mm,
And I think that's probably what the same thing that you're saying about the leaders who come up to you at the end of
right.
your your talks, which is where do we go from here?
Right. Right. I think the sense people have is surely this has consequences, right? Surely there are going to be consequences down the road for rolling out AI at this kind of scale without having really thought through, what it looks like at scale, what the societal implications are, what the governance implications are. And I think a lot of leaders and a lot of people who find themselves leaders by default are in a situation now of saying, well, look, I'm not trying to be retrograde. I'm not trying to be a Luddite. I don't want to hold back progress, but I also don't want us to, adopt things without having given due diligence to the process and without thinking through what would be the best way to do this. What would be some of the guardrails we need to put in place around this? What are some of the things, some of the conversations we need to have to understand why people engage with us as a business and what we're doing, what we're even doing in business in the first place. If we want to make ourselves faster and better at it through AI and other technology, why? let's just get clear on that so that when we do apply that technology, we're doing it in a way that actually enhances our purpose and what we're in business to do, as well as enhancing the experiences of the people who are coming to us for the reasons that they're coming to us.
So you talk in the book about the now next continuum, don't you? Explain,
Mm.
talk to us about that.
Yeah, it feels like that's the core of a lot of what the tension people are feeling is this sense of time, the sense of acceleration, the sense, as the title implies, the world feels like it's moving too fast. Technology is a big reason for that, but we know there are also huge other factors that are like economic instability and climate change and geopolitical upheaval and all of these macro factors that are happening. I think everyone who is in a position of decision making is feeling hamstrung by those decisions and by the uncertainty of the future. And so, one of the things that I wanted to do with this book was to demystify the future a little bit and create a better model for decision making that really explains that the future is just a continuation of the present. It's not a mysterious time in which all kinds of things explode and you have no idea what's happening. It's like what we decide today is actually laying the groundwork for the future. And the better we are at understanding that, the more responsible the decisions we make.
You also talk about the harm of action versus inaction, don't you?
Yeah, so that's the thing. Along that now next continuum, there are decisions that we are making that are too fast for what we understand about the consequences that could come. And those are the harms of action. And then there are those decisions where we're holding back and we know that we have an opportunity to do something. Climate change is the one I keep coming back to. In 10, 20 years from now, there will be no decision we could have made today that will feel as if it was too rash or we did too much, right? We know that this is something we ought to be doing more about. And so we face the harms of inaction for those consequences that we could have staved off by moving today.
Damien said, Damien is a guest a couple of weeks ago on here. So he says, yes to human-friendly tech decisions so we don't let tech lead humanity, but enable humanity to progress and overcome the massive challenges ahead of us. Thanks, Damien.
Yes, exactly, Damien. I think that's the thing, is that we understand that there are problems that we face, climate change, for example, where tech could empower incredible scale. And that's the thing we know about AI, for example, is that it has scale and capacity like nothing we've ever seen before. And so I wrote about this in A Future So Bright, that if we look at the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, I've been tracking for several years now the implementation of AI proofs of concept that directly align with any one of those 17 goals. So you can look at gender equality, you can look at reduce poverty, you can look at all of these different kinds of goals and see examples of how AI could improve in material ways our ability to solve for those goals and improve human experience at scale. And that's something that we're woefully behind in doing. As the UN will tell you, we're well behind where we should be in achieving our measurable outcomes for 2030 on those sustainable development goals. So we're going to need the acceleration that comes from intentional application of technology. We just need to be very intentional in how we do that. And I think human first, human led is a way to do that, even though we also need to be thinking in a very ecocentric and balanced planetary perspective when we do that. It's just very natural, I think, for us to come from a place of humanity because we are humans and we understand what makes us human. I think that's the place that it feels most natural to ground ourselves as we go about the work we need to do.
So you talk about these human-friendly tech decisions, but we also have to balance that because we're all working in a high-pressure business environment,
Mm-hmm.
and we've got to make the number this quarter. So how do we actually make sure that we get this balance, between humanity and everyone says that we need to be in AI? Okay, we'll send out an edict that if you're not using AI, you're fired. What? How do we get this balance?
Yeah, so I talk about the idea of ethical acceleration, and one of the ways that we do ethical acceleration is to use insights and foresights to our advantage. We have the advantage of human wisdom. One way we can accrue those insights and foresights is by taking very intentional steps through the process of examining the questions we're asking, gathering partial answers, synthesizing those into insights. And I walk through this process in the book in great detail. Not every decision is going to lend itself to that sort of luxury of time and analysis, but those that do, we're going to find ourselves the richer for having accrued and sort of inventoried the insights that we have about our business, so that now decisions that come our way, we can just execute that much faster and know that we're in alignment with what we really are trying to accomplish. We'll still be more effective, we'll still be more profitable, we'll still be more efficient. And what will be driving that is purpose and our grounded principles and values. That is the orientation that I'm challenging leaders to take with this book.
So I've written down as my next question, and I think you kind of answered it, which is that really the practical implementation, which is many companies think about human centricity, but how do we actually design it in?
Yeah.
Do you have anything to add on it?
Yeah, I'll add this, and that is that I think for all the years that I've been working around digital transformation, which is quite a few, 20 or so years in this space, we've talked about transformation and innovation as if they're almost interchangeable concepts. And one of the key points I make in the book is that they are actually different constructs that exist on different planes of the now next continuum. So transformation is about catching up to the current moment, the current externalities. If you look at COVID, it's a great example. All of these things changed around us rather quickly, and educators needed to catch up, retailers needed to catch up, hospitals, all of these different kinds of constituencies needed to say, like, oh shoot, how are we going to operate when all of these realities have changed around us? And so that's what it's about, catching up. Innovation is about looking ahead and saying, okay, green space now, absolutely. Greenfield, white space. What could we do that's different? What could we do that actually solves the problem we've been trying to solve, but in a completely new way that none of our competitors have even begun to think about? Those are two very different questions. And I think both of them are extremely important. Both of them are going to be happening in most organizations at the same time. But I think the clearer we are about disambiguating those from one another, the more effectively we're going to be able to pursue this kind of ethical acceleration where we're using insights and foresights to make good decisions about how to implement technology. Sometimes we're using it to catch up, sometimes we're using it to get ahead. And that actually helps us be extremely clear about what it is we're intending to do.
You talk about tech amplifying intent. How can leaders ensure their intent is clear and responsible?
Yeah, I think that this is partly a matter of doing the work at a leadership level, kind of really reflecting and telling the origin story, kind of really being clear on what the company exists to do and is trying to do at scale, and articulating that through a very distilled, synthesized sense of purpose. And I mean, when I talk about purpose, I'm not talking about some abstract, touchy-feely, we want to do good in the world. And I'm also not talking about mission statements or vision statements that are usually 5 pages of quasi language, right? Like we're not talking about either of those things. I think in a 3 to 5 word, very succinct articulation of strategic organizational purpose, that will be the way that everybody can kind of row in the same direction and make sure they're moving as quickly and as effectively and in sync and alignment as the organization can.
I wrote a note down when I was reading the book. So it's kind of a question. It's also a note, and you said that the half-life of skills is shrinking.
Yeah, and I think I know a lot of your audience are marketers, and so I will point out that I think this is especially true in marketing. I think that it's a real challenge to us to continually reinvent what it is that really makes us add value. What the value we're adding? What is it about? It's not about being able to generate a lot of text quickly. It's not about, we know that, right? ChatGPT can do that way faster than we can. It's not about necessarily being able to format things beautifully, right? That's not the skill. I think we're going to come to a place where we're going to need to be increasingly adaptable, but that adaptability has to be coming from a place of applying core principles and core values across rapidly evolving contexts. And when we do that well, when we are trying to figure out, look, I know for me, I'm really focused on meaning and purpose. Like those to me are the most critical human attributes. And it might mean something different for other people. I ask this question as kind of a survey question in the room at keynotes a lot. And people will come up like, what is the one word that for you kind of captures what it means to be human? And people will come up with other things. And there's usually someone in the room who comes up with, something very silly. But I think when you really get at that one thing that really feels like, oh, that's really it. That's the core of what it means to be human. That you can use as a North Star to continually reinvent your skills around, but staying in that adaptable place where you're never thrown very much by new technology, where you're adopting new technology, figuring out how to use it, but also figuring out how it helps you deliver on that thing that you deliver so well.
So how can people create their own plan? Apart from buying your book and reading it, clearly, what can we do in terms of you talk about your what matters next action plan? So what can we explain what that is, and then talk about how we can create one?
Yeah, I think one of the most important things one of the most important takeaways from this book is that we need to ask better questions. And when I say better
Sorry.
questions, I mean more meaningful questions, right? We need to ask questions. Well, it's one of my fun, provocative statements that meaningful questions are more valuable than sensible answers. And that is true. If you think about it, you can always get more value out of a question. An answer will only serve you as long as that context to which it applies. But even as the context changes, that question, if it's meaningful, if it's rich, if it's provocative, can keep you coming back and going like, okay, but what about now? What
Yeah.
about now, right? How do we continually reapply? And so I think it's going to require us to get good at asking meaningful questions, to really get honed into our curiosity and really learn this skill of once we ask those questions, as I explain in the book, we're used to thinking that questions lead to answers and that's it, right? But actually, questions lead to partial answers, and partial answers challenge us to then figure out what is true about the difference between these partial answers. Where's the tension? What am I really seeing here? And usually within that tension, there is an insight. And insights are timeless. Insights will give us no end of guidance through these changing times. So I think this process in general is one, and I have it actually written out in blog posts on my site. So you don't need the book; you can search for it on my site and find this guidance. But this process is one that I really wish I could get taught in schools. I really wish that I could have people adopt it. I think it would make us all far more future ready and far more resilient to the changes that are inevitably going to continue coming.
And the speed of that of those
Yes,
changes coming. I mean, if
correct.
if we look at ChatGPT was launched 2.5 years ago,
Hmm.
and we're already at they just in terms of timelining this. ChatGPT 5 was announced.
Right.
Was it yesterday or the day before? And
Couple
the
days, yeah.
speed at that which has come. And I know that I've been through with my company in terms of getting people to adopt and actually start using AI, and the process that you have to actually do, because it's just too easy to do nothing, isn't it?
It's too easy to do nothing, and it's too easy to do anything that feels like, oh, well, now we're using AI, even though we're not using it meaningfully, we're not using it well. I see this a lot too, that when I speak with executive leaders, oftentimes they will tell me that they have AI implemented, they've been using ChatGPT, or they have conversational AI in their customer support, but they haven't done it in a way that truly aligns what matters within the organization, and they're not necessarily getting any smarter or better or faster as a result of it.
So we've had a comment from Andrew Slesser. Andrew is a very watches lots of these podcasts, and he says, with technology moving at such a pace, understanding the technology will put some up people's defenses, as they will think they're being overtaken by a computer when we should embrace it.
Yeah, Andrew, and that's really fair. I think there's a mixed reaction, obviously, from people when they encounter AI in their organizations. I just had a discussion on my podcast, the Tech Humanist Show, with Stephen M. R. Covey, and that just came out this past week. We talked about trust in AI, and one of the major problems here is that organizational leaders are not communicating very well to their teams, and they're doing actually a really terrible job in some cases of using language that sounds vaguely threatening or maybe directly threatening
Yeah.
to workers, and that makes workers feel like, okay, well, I guess I'm out of a job and I'm out of all jobs from here on out. Instead, what leaders should be doing is including people in this process and understanding, here's what we are in business to do. It looks like in a really intentional use of AI is going to help us do that better. And so what we see happening is that jobs are going to reshape around that. And we really are excited about this. We know there's going to be a lot of questions and a lot of curiosity. We hope that you're going to have a lot of enthusiasm for figuring out how you're going to be part of this process. If that kind of communication would go a lot farther than just doing it and assuming that people are going to sort of fall in or fall out along the process. So I think there's a lot of understandable human nature kind of going on here, in the sense that leaders don't necessarily have the communication skills and are doing, a job that they feel maybe they're intimidated to have the conversation. But of course, people who are in the firing line, so to speak, of these decisions are feeling very much like they're existentially threatened by them. So we need to resolve that tension for sure to go to do the kind of work we need to do going forward.
Kate, thank you so much for coming on. So just to remind people, Kate O'Neill's book is What Matters Next, a leader's guide to making human-friendly tech decisions in a world that's moving too fast.
And thank you for having me on.
So Kate, if we could get a copy of that on Amazon, can't we?
Mhm.
Or wherever that, any good bookshop, I assume.
That's right. It's a Wiley book, so they have good distribution. You should be able to find it just about anywhere.
And remind us where we can get you.
koinsights.com.
Excellent. Kate, thank you so much for coming on and talking about it.
Thank you.
I love the book. And it's just really nice, as I say, to read an up-to-date leadership book. And thanks for coming on and talking about it.
I appreciate it, Tim. Thank